50 years ago, a police officer played Russian roulette with a little boy's life.
The murder of a 12-year-old boy in the backseat of a police car, it shouldn't have happened.
What did happen was a reckoning that changed the city of Dallas forever. Anger over the murder of Santos Rodriguez, a child just 12 years old. Today, his story lives on.
We can't afford to forget that day, but more importantly, that it should never happen again.
For the first time, we go inside city archives to see what documents from the case reveal and how Santos inspired a city thousands of miles away.
You can have solidarity, if you will, with things that don't just happen in your backyard.
This is for his familia, his friends, La Raza, who will forever remember his name, Justicia Para Santos. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Cynthia Aguirre here at Pike Park in Dallas, where today we honor Santos Rodriguez. A memorial now stands here as a tribute to the 12-year-old boy murdered at the hands of a police officer over the theft of $8. A theft he didn't even commit. Many of you may not know this story, but you should. It is a dark moment in Dallas history, a moment that happened on a hot summer day in July like this one. Our crime and justice reporter Rebecca Lopez takes us back to what happened 50 years ago.
The story of Santos Rodriguez begins here in Little Mexico, where he lived with his 84-year-old grandfather. On July 23, 1973, 12-year-old Santos and his brother David played ball into the evening. The boys said they got home around 10:30 and went to bed. Their grandfather, Carlos Menez, did an interview with WFAA.
A las 11 estaban dormidos. 20 para las 3 llegó la ley buscándolos.
He says on July 24th, officers Roy Arnold and Daryl Kane dragged the boys from their beds.
Y ya les abrí la puerta y entraron y los levantaron y los esposaron. Los esposaron y los cargaron al carro y se los llevaron.
Less than an hour later, Santos would be dead.
The death story of a 12-year-old Dallas boy began here at the Phoenix service station on Cedar Springs.
We retrieved the police reports from the city archives and found the officers and 13-year-old David Rodriguez's statements.
$8 in cash was missing.
According to Officer Arnold, he was investigating the burglary of this cigarette dispenser at a Phoenix gas station on Cedar Springs.
Two boys were spotted early Tuesday morning breaking into the back window of the service station.
Arnold and Kane went to the Rodriguez home to find them.
Two officers picked up 12-year-old Santos Rodriguez.
The police report says they found the boys in bed, fully clothed and sweating profusely. David told investigators, "We had not left the house after we got home at 10 o'clock. We never went to the service station like the officers said." But still, the brothers were arrested. David said, "They took us outside and put us in the police car. They put me in the back seat and Santos in the front seat."
In an attempt to make
what happened next would spark outrage.
Seconds later, Santos couldn't answer any questions.
Officer Monty Monsabayas was a rookie in 1973. He recalls that night.
And it was horrific. And I was in shock.
Officer Kane wanted a confession, so he played Russian roulette with Santos while the child was handcuffed.
While the handcuffed boys were sitting inside the car,
he wrote, "I pointed the gun at Santos's head and said, 'Tell the truth,' and pulled the trigger, and the gun clicked because the cylinder was empty. Santos said something to the effect that he was telling the truth. I pulled the trigger again just to scare him, and this time the gun fired."
He was dead with a bullet in the left temple.
David told investigators, "The officer in the back seat took his gun out and pointed it at my brother's face, and it didn't fire. Then he said, 'This time I got a bullet in it.' Then he fired the gun one more time and shot him in the face. He started yelling, 'Oh my God.'" Frank Dyson was the Dallas police chief at the time.
It's hard to understand what caused a man to do something like this. It's hard to explain, and it's hard to accept.
Patrolman Daryl Kane was arraigned for the boy's murder this morning. A charge of murder with malice has been filed against Kane.
When the shooting happened, there was a lot of anger toward the police department and certainly for police officers.
The anger spilled onto the streets.
A number of the demonstrators turned violently on 4 police officers.
Former WFAA photojournalist John Goodjohnson shot the protest video.
Everybody was just so angry about it.
And then cop motorcycles were set on fire. Police moved in to make arrests as some of the protesters began looting stores.
That left a trail of destruction up and down Main and Commerce Streets.
The murder of a 12-year-old boy in the backseat of a police car, you can understand it, that it shouldn't have happened.
Monsibaya says the department wasn't ready for this.
They gave us a helmet and a shotgun, and they said, go respond.
Amid the anger and tension, the Rodriguez family dealt with the pain and the loss of Santos and prayed for justice.
The people here lament the fate of Santos.
Justice that didn't come.
Kane had pled not guilty and that the shooting of Santos Rodriguez was an accident.
Daryl Kane went to trial. For his defense, he claimed he didn't know the gun was loaded, but fellow officers testified the bullets were still in the gun when they took it from him.
Will you make any comment?
An all-white jury convicted Kane of murder with malice. He faced 5 to life. The jury gave him the minimum of 5 years in prison. He was released from jail pending an appeal.
The police, I guess back in those days, were kind of the untouchables. You just didn't mess with the police.
Ultimately, it took 5 more years to finally send Kane to prison. He was out in 2.5.
What Officer Roy Arnold could have done, if anything.
Officer Arnold was never prosecuted for his role for not intervening, but he was fired by DPD. 50 years later, the pain, the hurt, the anger still lingers.
Of course, the unanswered question in everybody's mind is why?
And those who lived it try to find peace by remembering Santos.
Why does 12-year-old Santos Rodriguez have to be dead?
Police never found the 2 boys' fingerprints at the scene of the theft, and the Justice Department declined to ever look into the case. As for Officer Daryl Kane, he died in 2019. I recently spoke with Santos's big brother, David, and he told me, quote, "When I found out Kane died, my hopes of him ever apologizing died too." David and Santos grew up just blocks away from here, the center of what was once known as Little Mexico. It is one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, the heart and soul of Dallas's Hispanic community. Those who lived here called it El Barrio. At its height, Little Mexico extended from Oaklawn Avenue to Ross. But as it became prime real estate for commercial development, families and businesses were pushed out. What was once Little Mexico is now Uptown, the West End, and the Arts District. There was so much pride for this neighborhood, and it was here at Pike Park where Santos used to play. And it was also here where the Latino community mobilized after his death. Meetings were planned here. The March for Santos was planned here. And as Adriana de Alba shows us, it was the beginning of a movement still rising today.
So this was the epitome of the worst that could happen.
Everyone has a day they'll never forget.
It was emotional because I grew up in that neighborhood where Santos was shot.
Rene Martinez was just 24 when his mother, Maria Villasana, approached him with a challenge.
What are you going to do about it?
That was the question that would spark change.
We had the meetings immediately.
A young Rene organized protests.
And our community is very, very upset over the transparency.
And day after day, the community's anger grew.
It was a march of justice for 12-year-old Santos Rodriguez.
Because I was the youngest and dumbest, I was the one that was asked to lead the march.
4 days after Santos' death, Rene led thousands on a peaceful march down Commerce Street.
Huge turnout in the march, and the riot itself was also very unfortunate in a way because it turned into a riot.
But as the march ended, another group arrived.
They were angry, they were much more vocal, and they couldn't really be controlled.
They burned up a squad car, blew up a motorcycle, and tore through storefronts, leaving a trail of destruction.
That was the epitome of anger and what people were feeling that day.
That was the beginning of the Chicano movement in North Texas, followed by years of marches, meetings, and calls for accountability.
So we did get some outcomes. And it was the beginning of the type of police reform that we now have.
This has been Renee's life's work, decades of activism and leadership with LULAC because of the question that followed tragedy.
But what are you going to do about it? It's like my mother said to me when I was 23 years old, what are you going to do about it, Renee?
Renee's focus now, educating our youth.
We can't afford to forget that day, but more importantly, that it should never happen again.
Sharing Santos' story means the fight for justice will continue with our next generation. Jobin Paniker shows us how Southern Methodist University is giving young people an opportunity that Santos never had.
It is not a well-known connection. The murder of an innocent child in the 70s and a university 5 miles north. You could say it's about as well known as the event itself.
And I didn't, honestly.
Every semester out of a class of 30 people, there might be 1, 2 hands go up.
Santos Rodriguez was shot and killed by a Dallas police officer.
The worst crime in the history of Dallas, possibly excluding the killing of President Kennedy.
Rick Halperin is the director of the Human Rights Program here at SMU. His office, their mission, is a history lesson where hope and horror meet.
If we cannot reconcile with our past, there is not a way forward.
SMU would name a scholarship after Santos, available to any student studying human rights.
I had a megaphone every other Saturday.
Tyne Dixon was awarded it in 2021. Graduated, 23 years old, and now in Houston, with a nonprofit called Restoring Justice, with hopes of ending mass incarceration.
They are fanatic how much they care about the full spectrum of human rights.
And it is an ongoing battle. Hadi and Rick remind us just how hard it was to get the city to approve the wording on Santos's plaque.
We wanted to speak truth.
That one word, murder.
But it's such an incendiary word.
They tell us it took more than a year for Dallas to agree to the word murder.
This is a city that's trying to protect its image.
Tyne is the next generation to carry the mantle fighting for human rights. The world sought that before any scholarship did.
The feeling of hopelessness, but also the feeling of hope at the same time.
Dallas has made strides, they agree. The apologies, the statue, are first steps, not last. Dr. Halperin says the program, the scholarship, their efforts are about fighting the most dangerous words in human rights. I didn't know.
They have a right to know the truth of this city.
In Dallas, I'm Jobin Paniker.
We cannot undo what has been done, but we can look beyond.
It took 50 years to turn a tragedy into change.
Who would have known in 1973 that the chief of police in 2023 was going to be a Latino?
The progress the Dallas Police Department has made and Santos's legacy lives on. How the story of a little boy from Dallas inspired a city he never visited. And before we head to break, I want to share an unforgettable moment in this story's history. Santos's mother, Bessie, waited a very long time for her son to be honored right here at Pike Park. And we were there for the incredible moment 2 years ago.
He's an artist who is known for capturing the human spirit.
So normally what I'll do is I'll build it up and paint the clay on and then go back in and do finer details with some of these other tools.
For this sculpture, Seth Vendible says he put his heart into creating a piece that portrays tragedy, but also hope.
I wanted to show that this is a child, an innocent child, and the magnitude of what was done, what was taken. It was a child from his family.
When we met Seth in 2021, he was putting the finishing touches on the statue of 12-year-old Santos Rodriguez.
How you doing?
For 48 years, Bessie Rodriguez, Santos's mother, had waited for something in her son's honor, acknowledging the injustice and remembering her son.
What do you think?
And that moment came.
Finding purpose.
We were there as she saw Santos's statue for the first time.
It's pretty. That's a big honor after so many years, remembering all that. It's been a long time. and bring it to life when it was so many years forgotten.
There we go. That should do it. Here we go. Here we go.
Bessie put her fingerprint on the statue
That'll stay.
right in the palm of Santos's hand.
So we have my fingerprint.
Yes.
It really means a lot because it's kind of her seal of approval.
Memories.
This is definitely my favorite part of the piece now.
The statue shows a smiling Santos with his hands outstretched.
It makes you feel God is taking care of him.
The statue will be placed at a park overlooking downtown Dallas.
Thank you for everything.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my honor.
What people can do.
A monument of reflection,
A boy born 12 years ago.
but also progress.
What they can create.
A tragedy, but a symbol of hope.
The hope here is that there will come light.
And welcome back. I'm joined now by senior crime and justice reporter Rebecca Lopez. And Rebecca, you know the story of Santos Rodriguez better than most.
Cynthia, this case has always been really important to me because of the significance and the injustices that happened. But now the Dallas Police Department is made up of more than 50% of people of color, and 27% of them are Hispanics. It's a dramatic change from what existed 50 years ago at the Dallas Police Department. In 1973, there were 500 Dallas police officers. Only 5 were Latino. Monty Monsiváis was one of them. He was on patrol on July 24th when 12-year-old Santos Rodriguez was killed by a Dallas police officer.
I would say it's the most impactful moment in the community, in the city.
In response, he says citizens turned their anger towards police.
I was called coconut, white on the inside, brown on the outside, and that I was a traitor and that I wasn't, backing our people.
Monsiváis is still on the force and says over the years, policing has changed. He points to the hiring of Dallas's first Latino police chief, Eddie Garcia.
This little breeze is nice. Individuals like myself and others have community leaders to really thank for the fact that doors were open and opportunities were given that may not otherwise have been given in years past.
I'm so sorry. This was the first history lesson that I got when I got here.
One of the first things Garcia did as chief was apologize to Santos's mother, something no one at DPD had ever done.
On behalf of the Dallas Police Department, as a father, I am sorry. It was long overdue, and something that we got to continue as a profession to work hard to ensure our community knows that that's not us. God bless you, Santos. Thank you.
Garcia says it's important to learn from the past, improve training, and make changes in hopes that history doesn't repeat itself.
It took 48 years for the city of Dallas to honor Santos with a statue here at Pike Park where he used to play. So you may be surprised to know that in Seattle, Washington, they've honored him for years. Here's Sebastian Robertson.
Hi, Cynthia. I'm here in Seattle. It is a beautiful day at Santos Rodriguez Memorial Park. And as you're about to see, he's a young boy who all these years later, his legacy is still alive thousands of miles from Dallas. Among the swing sets and community garden, in the shade of the summer sun, a plaque to remind park goers of a 12-year-old boy who was shot and killed by police.
You can have solidarity, if you will, with things that don't just happen in your backyard.
Estela Ortega, a longtime community advocate in Seattle, says the news of the 1973 killing of Santos Rodriguez spread across country by word of mouth and newspaper clippings. Arriving in Seattle at a time where the city had a growing Latino population, one that was still finding its footing. There was a feeling that Rodriguez could have been any of them, any of us.
The importance is to show when we're talking about police accountability and how the police treat people, it's a reminder of how bad they can be.
In the years after his death, they named the park in Santos's honor, a park in front of an old schoolhouse that just a year earlier was part of an occupation. In 1972, an ESL teacher Roberto Maestas and his students took over this abandoned schoolhouse, a sit-in to call attention to the needs of the Hispanic community, one he believed was being left behind. 3 long months later, El Centro de la Raza was born.
The Center for People of All Races.
And in 2015, the park was officially dedicated in his honor.
Santos has become a symbol of why we struggle for justice.
In front of a special guest, traveling all the way from Dallas, Santos Rodriguez, Santos's mother.
It's an innocent child. They didn't find out that he was innocent until they took his life.
She couldn't believe that there was an organization, 3,000 miles away, that had done something for Santos immediately to remember him and not forget racism impacts our communities.
They haven't forgotten him.
Now, nearly a half-century later, Santos is forever memorialized in a city he never visited. In Seattle, I'm Sebastian Robertson.
Stay with us, a powerful performance for Santos right after the break. We thank you for joining us this half hour to remember this little boy, to celebrate his life. We leave you with Dallas Poet Laureate Joaquin Cihuatanejo with a poem for Santos.
Tonight, let me be more than the words I recite. Tonight, I'll admit I never really belonged to sunlight because, like my grandfather taught me, in the city where all this happens, some things can only grow by the light of the full moon. So let the spirit bloom. Let this be more than metaphor. Let this be sacred. Move this from elegy to exaltation, from song to chant, from chant to cry. I want to scream you back to life. Tonight, I am you, Santos, a small brown child with a beautifully wild smile. When they asked me to write this, I heard your voice reverberating in my head, asking me, begging me to be your speaker for the dead. So this is not a poem. This is an act of desperation. This is hands cupped, breath soft in the glowing embers of your ashes, hoping, praying that your spirit will rise, while the simple question of why blends into, how do I find the poetry in gunshots and lost lives? So let night be day. Let tears be flood. Let the stage be your life. Let my ink be your blood. So I pull out a page, clenching my pen with all of my might, trying to create just a little bit of light in the middle of all this darkness, desperate to write something beautiful and true, something like you. So I take a deep breath, close my eyes, begin to delve, think about my daughter's hands at 12, but all I can manage to write is this. Surely a purple flower sprouts from the bullet hole in the flesh of a child. That's just my imagination running wild. Yes, that's just the poet in me talking again, and this cannot be about poetry. Because this is based on the reality of the most evil form of police brutality. The heart of it lies between an innocent youth and an awful truth. And the truth is the only thing that pours forth from a bullet hole is blood. But know this, when we speak of you, from this day to our demise, in our words, your spirit lies. And when we speak, Santos, you will rise. You come home to little Mexico like you should have all those years ago. In our voices, you become what you were, what you will always be. Beautiful, innocent, and free.